of our task force. So happy to see you guys. Hopefully everything's good with the weather, and I've heard about pipes bursting and slipping and falling and all kinds of things. And, so hopefully you've managed all that. Yeah, and hopefully that's the end of it, and we can just have rain. You all have probably heard the conversation that is circulating about Plymouth and where are we going with Plymouth? And so I bring that up mainly, one, there's a meeting tomorrow night that will give us some more direction as to where we will go. But depending on the direction that is chosen tomorrow night, it may we may have to move our February 7th meeting. So there will be something that may occur related to Plymouth on February 7th, depending on which avenue is chosen. So keep that in mind, please hold that date, and we will still have it depending on what happens. We're gonna continue forward as if we were having that meeting as usual. So if not, we need to figure out what we want to do, because we really want to keep this going. We don't want to lose momentum on this task force. So, so we can either, should the meeting not happen on the 7th, we can move it to the next week, but that's Valentine's Day. Some of you may have plans for Valentine's Day, and I understand that. So an option is to move the 7th to the 14th, should we need to, or move the 7th to the last day of the month, which is 28th. So that would mean we'd have a meeting on the 21st and the 28th. But then it also means we would have 5 in a row, because remember, we're having 3 in March. So if that doesn't bother you, having all those back to back, we can do it that way, or we could have it on the 14th. So I don't know what people, if you want to speak to, if they have things going on or can't be here.
Sure, I mean, not getting into specifics, and I know you guys have many meetings in the evening already. Is it an option to move the meeting to either the Tuesday or the Thursday so therefore Tuesday 6th or Thursday 8th instead?
Yeah, planning commission meetings on first and third Tuesdays. So other than that, DEI task force on third or fourth Thursdays. Yeah. So, but yeah,
Yes, I'm not sure what was the particular people on the agenda, but is there an option to just move it to a different location in the building? And because the public will still have access now that we're recording.
I think you, but
You're
they
the main
kind of
one, yeah.
need to be in the other meeting as well, so.
Right.
yeah, and I don't want to give the public, I don't want the public to have to choose
Okay.
between 2 meetings. But yeah, we could, what about Thursday, the 8th of February?
Yeah, I mean, it's really gonna be contingent on all the presenters, because we have 4 or 5, I think 5 presenters that day, all different department leaders.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, they've earmarked this day, you've given them a notice, but, so that would, you know, I'm more with the Brandon's of the day.
Should be better for Brandon because the Wednesdays don't want to. So,
Well, yeah, we can definitely check on that. I can send you all an email. Might have to do a poll, something like that, but we'll have to choose. Maybe we don't choose. right?
Does February 8th look okay to you already?
Yes.
Mhm.
No,
Works.
then.
Works.
That's the one, that's the week I'm out of town.
Oh.
You're out
You'd be at it.
But you would be at any.
I'd be at it.
Okay.
Okay.
That's cool.
Maybe we can do the 8th. If not, then anybody have any problem with the 14th?
Nope,
Your significant others won't mind.
she is anti-commercial Valentine's Day, so I'm fine.
If we do Valentine's, it's on a day other than Valentine's Day.
Same.
Okay, so we talked about meetings. All right, I think it's your turn.
Okay.
Do your contract city overview.
Yeah, and one thing I want to quickly do right before Contract City is talk about Kenmore's form of government. I'm really nerdy on this, a lot of this stuff. And,
Need more than what we can.
So, you know, I was saving, I took a class on political science class back when I was in college and I was learning about different forms of city government, and I think that's what really got me hooked into local government, was so fascinating. But in Washington state, there's two forms of city government. Does anybody know the two main forms of city government? Yeah, Katrina.
Council, city manager and strong mayor.
That's right, yeah. And so let's talk about strong mayor first of all. So you always have the people in charge. That's true in both forms of government. But in a strong mayor, I will say. Mayor, that's a nickname. It's often the official is mayor council form. But what happens is the people choose the mayor. And then people choose the council. And it's kind of like the president and Congress, executive branch and legislative branch. And then the mayor hires staff. And in some cases, like especially in smaller cities, the mayor is like a part-time volunteer who will get paid just a little bit and might have a separate day job. So in a lot of cities, the mayor hires a city administrator to run the affairs of the city. So that's what happened to me at Gig Harbor. Gig Harbor is a strong mayor form. And so I was hired by the mayor, and he was a retired contractor. I think he got paid $900 a month to be the mayor. And so he hired me to be the city administrator, and I hired staff and ran the operations of the city. I interacted a lot with the council because they needed staff. They relied on staff for policy advice and all that. So I just think kind of think of, you know, the federal form, they got president, Congress. So executive branch, legislative branch. And I'll leave out the judicial branch because that's a whole other conversation and we don't have. So, and then the other form is called council manager. Council manager form of government, and that's what Kenmore is. They got the people in charge. People. We the people. And what they do is they elect a city council. And they are the legislative branch of government. What happens is the city council, they hire the city manager. Is the executive branch of government. So in this case, the executive branch is answerable to the legislative branch. And then the city manager hires staff. This form of government was created in the 19-teens in response to a lot of corruption and nepotism that was going on. It was during that Woodrow Wilson progressive era. And it mimics the corporate model, which is the board of directors, CEO. So that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to like professionalize the running of city government rather than having the who are happening to be elected. So there's pros and cons to both. This makes both branches more answerable to the people. If you want more checks and balances, and maybe if you like gridlock, this creates that. No, and actually gridlock can be an intentional thing that gets built into government. Just to kind of slow things down and have the branches check each other. So this doesn't have those advantages. I worked in both, and obviously I like this form just because it feels more efficient, feels less expensive. Things always got studied a lot more, and we're just ended up being more expensive and time consuming. Because you had to these both branches, and there were times when I was caught in the middle between these two branches when I was in Big Harbor, and that wasn't fun. So you may be looking at this, and what about the mayor? Don't we have a mayor? Yes, we do. Does anybody know what's going on there? Yeah, then.
The council chooses them.
Yeah, so all 7 of the council run, when they run for election, they run for city council. And, so like David Baker was the mayor for like 14 years. Whenever he was up for re-election, he'd always run for city council. He would not run for mayor, he would run for city council. And then after every election, the city council chooses from among themselves who the mayor is. They do that on the very first regular meeting after the council members are installed. And so they did that just on January 9th. They chose from among themselves who the mayor and the deputy mayor. So does the mayor and the deputy mayor have any extra power or authority? Not really. No, they don't get an extra vote or anything. They get a vote. But I guess you could say the mayor has extra power in that he runs the meetings, right?
Sure.
Yeah, he gavels and he represents the city and he cuts ribbons and, represents the city, groundbreakings and things like that. But the mayor is purely legislative and doesn't have any extra authority beyond the executive council. And then the other thing I like to point out and remind the council on this, the city council, they only have 1 employee. That's me. And it's state law says that I have to be the one that hires and fires and directs other staff. So the city council is prohibited from directing staff. Anyway, thought that would be an interesting civics lesson. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, one interesting part of that, with the council mayor, if you look at like Robert's Rules of Order, it's not like just the mayor that can like ask for a motion and do all that kind of stuff. Any city council member can make a motion at any time. They all have equal power on the dais.
That's right. Yeah, so some examples of strong mayor are Seattle. Lake Forest Park next door. Issaquah. Renton. And there's more, on the council manager, of course, you got Ken Moore,
Yeah, Kirkland.
Kirkland. Bothell. Shoreline. Woodinville. Mountain Lake Terrace, Mill Creek. Yeah,
What's Bellevue?
Bellevue,
Bellevue's also-
yeah. Tacoma is council manager. There's over 280 cities, well, 280 something cities or 280. And the smaller you go, the more likely you're gonna have this form. The tiny cities have this form. So because of that, this form outnumbers this form. The cities kind of in the middle population tend to be council manager, but again, it's not our best. And the thing is, new cities tend to be council manager. So cities that formed in the 19th, there was a big push for cities to incorporate in the 90s because of the Growth Management Act. And the only exception I can think of is Liberty Lake, but I think every other city that's incorporated in the 90s and 2000s was council manager form. And I think it's because when they incorporated, they wanted a pro to do it, right? They wanted to make sure that's where they're gonna get somebody who knew what they were doing. So, yeah. Everett, strong mayor, Mukilteo, strong mayor. Redmond, yes, Redmond.
Why smaller cities? I would have assumed actually that smaller cities would have gone for council manager.
They just can't afford them like a 1,500 population cities for full time.
Okay.
They can't even afford a city administrator, they're so small.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yes, so. Also, older cities tend to be this. Not the case always, I like to call them. Yeah, that'll be. Awful, so. These older cities, some at one point made the shift. Okay, all right, the other thing that's actually on the agenda is contract cities. So there's two ends of the spectrum when it comes to cities. Especially in Washington State, I'll just sit over here so you don't have to. There's what we call full service cities, and then there's contract cities. And then there's everything in between, but full service and contracting, like the two ends of the spectrum. What that means is, a full service city provides most municipal services in the house. So like they have their own fire department, police department, municipal court and judge, animal control, jail, police department, did I say that already? Utilities like water and sewer. That's a full service city that does everything in-house where they're departments of the city, staff of the city. Contract city, on the other hand, contracts a bunch of that stuff out. And Kenmore is on the contract end of the spectrum. So we contract out for police. So we don't have our own police department. Does anybody know who we use for police?
King County Sheriff.
Sure.
Yeah, King County Sheriff. We don't have to use King County Sheriff. We could form our own department, or we could contract with Kirkland or Bothell or Lake Forest Park. But since we became a city, we've always incorporated with, we've always used King County Sheriff. And we don't have our own municipal court. We use King County District Court, we use their judges. And we don't have our own employee who's a prosecutor. We contract with a law firm to do our prosecution and public defender services. We don't have our own jail, like some cities do. We use a jail down in Des Moines called SOAR. It's a regional group of cities that form that jail. We contract with King County for animal control. We're part of a larger utility district for water and sewer. So North Shore Utility District serves all of Kenmore and about 60% of Kirkland. Tiny bit of Bothell, tiny bit of Lake Forest Park. That's water and sewer. Some cities have their own electric utilities. That's rare. Seattle does. But most cities are now either served by Puget Sound Energy or a bigger public utility district. So what am I forgetting? We used to contract out public works maintenance services like parks and road maintenance. Lake Forest Park used to provide that for us. But we broke up with them in 2018, 2019 for a whole bunch of reasons, and we're good friends. Yeah.
That's fire.
Yeah, we're part of a larger fire district. It covers Lake Forest Park and more. And that district has its own separate board of directors that are elected by the people, and it has its own taxing powers. To make things more complicated though, they decided to get rid of all their staff and contract for fire with Shoreline Fire. So I shouldn't say get rid of their staff, that sounds bad, but Shoreline Fire took on their staff, and so North Shore Fire doesn't have any employees. They might have like a secretary or something, but other than that, they don't have any firefighters on their payroll. They pay Shoreline Fire to do all the firefighting and emergency services for Kenmore and Lake Forest Park. I think that that's a prelude to a future merger. where the two districts are probably going to merge and become one district someday, but that's just a guess on my part. What other services?
Hospital, and part of the public hospital district.
Yeah, but cities typically don't provide hospital services. We used to contract out things like traffic engineering, but when Caleb and Sarah died, that was a big push to raise that level of service and get our own in-house traffic engineer. We used to contract out for surface water utility services with King County, like inspecting surface water utilities such as vaults and storm ponds and things like that. And we brought that in-house. That was actually a cost savings measure. So the question whether to contract out or provide the service in-house. There's really two competing, I don't know, competing, but there's really two reasons why you do one or the other. It's either to save money or to get better local control, or both. So those are the reasons why you want to contract out or not. In the case of the King County Sheriff's Department, I feel like we have the best of both worlds. There was a study done a long time ago that needs updating. But back in 2011, there was a study done that said, should the city keep contracting or to bring it in-house? And back then, the study said we were saving a lot of money by contracting with the sheriff. You said, well, you don't have local control of this big giant agency. But I actually feel like we do. We have our own chief of police. His rank is sergeant in the King County Sheriff's Department. But he's our chief. He's part of our team. If I want him to do something, he'll do it. You know, our uniforms say Kenmore on them, but police cars say Kenmore on them. So, and I think that the larger agency, having a larger agency, being part of a larger agency, you get really good quality police officers and you tap into the full breadth of all their services. Gotcha.
How much of that dynamic of having local control is specific to the people that we're working with versus the actual dynamics of the relationship? Like, basically, if we get a different chief of police, would that completely change the relationship, or is some of that relationship sort of outlined in the agreement?
It is outlined in the agreement, but it is also very dependent on the personalities that you get. And
Do you have control over who that is?
yes and no. So if I'm not happy with the chief of police, I call the sheriff and say, get me a new chief. And they'll do it. And I know it because it's happened. But I don't have a lot of people to choose from because of their union rules. Because I have to either recruit from the sergeants, the people who are existing sergeants, or people who are eligible to become a sergeant. And so we'll put out an advertisement for chief, sergeant, and we just hope that existing King County Sheriff sergeants or upcoming sergeants apply for the job. And in the last couple of times we've done it, we've just gotten like 2 or 3 applicants, and we've gotten lucky. They're good applicants, and you know, like Brandon Mullins, the best. So we're super lucky to have him. But the good news is, if I don't like a chief, I can quickly make a change.
How long are the contracts for, and is there a bid process?
This contract has no end date. There's just a termination notification, I believe, of 18 months, which is too short in my opinion, because either party can cancel with 18 months notice. So there's no requirement to bid it out, but if the city could obviously do that, we could say, hey, next door neighbor cities and King County, give us a bid.
But beyond police, are the other contracts that Kenmore have, are they competitive in nature, or they are just subcontracted out, but without a competitive nature in them?
We tend to contract with other governments. So, a lot of them have been in place for as long as before I got there, like the municipal court of King County. That's just something that's been in place for a long time. But, we did, do some cost comparisons for jail quite a few years ago, and we found that SCORE was the cheapest and even justifying the drive down there.
Yeah, so when the fire district was looking at contracting, they were limited because in Snohomish County, they have a different dispatch system.
Mhm.
So they couldn't actually contract with a city, with an area in Snohomish County. Like if we were gonna contract for police, are we limited? Like we couldn't try contracting with Snohomish County?
Yeah, I think the call center issue would be a problem.
That they have a different,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's contract it. Yeah, Jeff.
Have we, I thought I remember talking about this at some point. But, so there's the police services and there was discussion of a non-police response team. Like a de-escalation, like care team for those kinds of things. Do we have that here? And is that part of the contract with King County Sheriff, or is that a separate group?
The separate contract, but they work close together. It's called Racer, it used to be called Radar. And we've been part of that for, I want to say like 8 years. But in the wake of George Floyd's murder, we ramped it up. The participating cities ramped it up even more and put more funds into it. Next.
So as far as accountability piece, ever since we're contract policing now, like how much review do we have, as far as kind of like the whole, you brought up the research program, but as a contract city, are we at a place that we can't hold certain standards and do a review, or being able to see kind of how be part of the policy making process, I guess?
Yeah, there's a couple avenues for that. One is, there's two, so King County has 12 contract city customers. So it's us and Shoreline and Woodinville and Maple Valley and Covington and SeaTac and Larksdale, there's just something. So there's 12 total customers. And so we have a oversight committee, the city managers are on, and they meet every other month. And so they get together, and that is a way of holding the sheriff's department accountable and influencing sheriff's policies. And then they also have a finance team, where all the finance directors of each of those cities. They meet, every other month.
Yeah, something.
Yeah, to scrutinize the numbers and make sure that what they charge us is fair and reasonable, and things like that. And then in addition, there's a independent body appointed by the King County Council called OLEO, Office for Law Enforcement Oversight. And so issues dealing with officer use of force and things like that go to OLEO for review. And Kenmore, I believe, has had representation on OLEO in the past, council members or members of our committee have been on OLEO. It's been rare, but I think it's happened once or twice. I think our first mayor was on OLEO.
Rob, is the city usually responsible, city staff, for the legislative implementation versus the making of the law? So I'm looking at this expenditures and revenue strategy that the council did adopt, and in here, for example, is 2024 seek alternative jail providers. Does the staff take on that work, or does the council do some of the work that it dictates, like congressman?
No, the staff does.
Does it all? Okay.
Yeah, good question. So just to give you an example between a contract city and full service city, Kenmore and Mount Lake Terrace, we're about the same population, but Mount Lake Terrace is more of a full service city. And so they have close to like 200 employees. And Kenmore has about 55-ish employees. So same population, but they have 200 employees, we have 55-ish. So it's not because Lake Road Mountain Lake Terrace is fat and bloated. It's because they have more stuff in the house. They have municipal court and they have police and fire, I think, I'm not sure. They have, you know, the utilities and things like that. So I think Bothell is double our size, but they have close to 400 employees. They have a fire department, police department, municipal court, things like that. So one of you may be asking, more than one of you may be asking, well, if we contract all this stuff out, then what do we do? Were you wondering that?
We know we're getting to it.
We are gonna get to that. One of the reasons we've grown is because we have taken more things in-house over the last decade or so. The big one was public works maintenance. So when we broke up with Lake Forest Park, we brought on about 4 or 5 new employees. 4 or 5, 5 or 6, somewhere around there. New employees, and so that added to our head count when we took that over. Similarly, when we took traffic engineering away from the county, that added a new body to our staff. So things like that, yeah.
Speaking of engineering, is there any other types of like? I know that the city has a lot of, you know, permitting and, you know, those kinds of reviews. Are there any other areas of the city that where it's contracted out versus internal?
Well, yeah, IT is a good example. So we don't have any IT employees. We use a firm called Lighthouse. And they come every Friday, right?
Fridays to help us on site, but otherwise they're reachable. So, you know. Mobile.
Yeah,
I guess I was thinking more of like, you know, I've seen discussion of like environmental review of building projects or other types of like, when there's projects or when there's things like permitting or those kinds of things. Is there any of those services that are contracted versus internal? And again, you know, you're talking about, you know, considering cost versus internal control. And, you know, when we're thinking about priorities like environmental sustainability or those kinds of things, like I'm thinking about, you know, how much of that is directed, you know, by you directly versus, I was thinking traffic engineer too, you know, like we have pedestrian focus and safety focus that is more easily managed if it's internal staff versus contracted out. So I was just curious if there was any other areas of the city where you're kind of thinking about that dynamic.
yeah, so in permitting. In permitting, we can, this is before my time, but I'm told we used to contract out more permitting services like Debbie would know. Like building inspectors and plan review and things like that.
Yes.
But we brought it in-house, I'm told, because it was more cost effective, wasn't it?
It's true.
Yeah, and we got better local control. There are times when we have to farm out that stuff to consultants, if there's just too much workload for staff or we have a vacancy. So for example, right now, we have an engineer position in development services that their main job is to review civil plan permit applications. So like if a development comes in, they review the plans for sidewalks and driveways and utilities and where the road's gonna go. That position is vacant right now. And so we're using a consulting firm right now to fill in, and it's not cheap.
We will also contract out for special engineering specialties like geotech services. We have a consultant that we use for any issue related to geotech. So things like that we will farm out.
Okay. But those are more like a project by project basis.
Yeah.
Sounds like, okay. Yeah.
So I was reading on the GIS. Is that what Lighthouse does?
No, GIS is something that we recently brought in-house, so. And we'll go over that, so in this budget that got adopted 23-24, we added several new positions. And you'll see a justification for them in this book here. But one of them was GIS, we've just been way behind the times on GIS. And kind of suffering for it over the years. So we did add a new employee that's a GIS technician. She is mostly charged to surface water utility, which is not part of this discussion because it's a separate, as we explained last time, it's a separate fund that's self-sustaining. I think she's about 2/3 charged to surface water, so that's like what most of her work is, but the general fund does cover about 1/3 of it.
So I don't remember when the city hall was built here. There was additional space included for the thought of bringing things more in-house. So how close are we to actually filling this now? We're like, we really couldn't add any more in-house versus contract because we don't have room for them.
That's a great question. Yeah, we are pretty close to capacity now. We could probably squeeze in a few more, but our cubicles are pretty big, in my opinion. These folks don't like hearing anything.
Have you seen his office?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's contract city versus, yeah.
You can put portable out there.
Mhm.
You could add a portable out there or something.
Oh, God. That would be bad.
Be nice in the summer.
Okay, perfect. So we're gonna move to the next part of the agenda, which is budget 101. There's likely to be lots of questions either now or later, so that is fine. And Bob and I think are gonna probably tag team a little bit throughout this. So, I think you guys all know this, but the city of Kenmore has a biennial budget. Right now we are working in the 2023-24 cycle, and as we've talked to you guys about, forward thinking, into, up until the 2030. So the next 3 biennia, right? So 2025-26, 27-28, and 29-30 is what we want to kind of right the ship during that time period. We run from January through December, so regular calendar year, and we have to adopt the budget no later than December 31st, but that's way too late. So usually we adopt it in November. We are a cash basis of accounting. I don't know how many of you know accounting, but that was weird for me because I've always done accrual accounting. So, yeah, it's a whole new world, a little bit of a learning curve about that, but we are a cash basis.
So can you, for folks that might not know that, explain the difference?
So a simple example is at year end, so like for police services, if we haven't received our bill to pay, right, then and we don't know what to pay, we don't accrue. Like we don't estimate how much to accrue and hold that cost from 2023, right? It just gets paid in 20. So we don't make sure that the this time of the service is the expenditure matches the time of the service, right? That's not a strict cutoff for the work that we do. That's a simple example of others. But
Yeah, I've worked with both of them,
Yeah.
but, and I think certain types of agencies tend toward one more than the other. Do city governments typically tend towards basis versus accrual basis, or is it just variable?
From where I was at, it was always accrual, so I don't know if we're an anomaly or not.
Yeah, it varies. I've worked for both. I don't know what the answer is on,
It may not be a pattern.
yeah. It is more expensive to do accrual. Yeah, if we did modified accrual, we'd probably have to hire another finance person.
Are there any, do you have any large, long-term prepaid contracts that would fall outside of a biennium budget? Basically, you prepay for 3 years and so you don't see it show up in.
I don't think there's any I would consider large. I mean, we have our typical, software agreements, that type of thing, but nothing comes to mind that would be, throw things off unusually.
Okay.
Nothing prepaying. I think I know what you're saying.
But if you engage in a three-year
Yeah.
contract, but it's annually paid, then it
You're
solves
paying
your
it.
problem. But if you're paying for 3 years up front to get a discount, then it could potentially jump a biennium.
Most likely would.
Yeah, yeah.
In all the ones
It would
I've,
have to, it's
Yeah,
at
yeah.
some point.
Yeah.
yeah, all the transactions I've seen, we are just paying like an annually at the beginning of the year or whatever. I've not seen any that were paid up front, other than you're paying like implementation costs. And then this annual subscription, and then the next year the subscription, so.
Right.
Not aware of any.
I've done one contract for about $30,000 over a course of 3 years, just paid it in the first year.
Yeah.
And because it was for a project that was gonna last for 3 years, so that was the biggest I've ever used.
Our total biennium budget for 23-24 is 87 million. And just so you know, these numbers in this, we did pass some amendments, but these are pre-amendment numbers. So I did not have time to incorporate all the amendments into these numbers.
That's all funds.
Yeah, all funds, 87.3 million for 2 years. And, so the main funds that we have here in Kenworth is our general fund. We have special revenue funds, which I'll go over, capital projects, enterprise and debt service.
Those are the main categories.
So general fund, for this biennium, we have 32.7 million budgeted. So this accounts for all the resources, except those required to be accounted for in another fund. So, all of our general operating, no, not gonna read it. We have different, what our system calls activities, we call them departments, outside of the accounting system. And so you can see all the different departments that we have, city council, manager, different, engineering, environmental services, finance, legal, public safety, blah, blah, blah.
So is personnel inter-budgeted with actual activities of the department here rather than being a separate operational versus
Oh,
personnel?
yeah, each department has their personnel costs
Built in.
embedded in that. Exactly, good question. Okay. Next. Is it not done? So revenues, here's a breakdown of our revenues, by type. So you can see our largest source of revenues is our property taxes at 11.4 million for the 2 years. Next is sales taxes. And then utilities taxes at 3 million. I will have a chart next to break that down. Franchise fees, 1.7, another chart for that. Intergovernmental, 1.4, charges for services, 1.3, I have a chart for that. Other licenses and building permits, 1.1, another chart. Miscellaneous, other taxes and reimbursement of overhead costs. Yes,
So if you look at property tax, that's our largest source of revenue. And have we talked about the 1% growth limit? Does anybody know about this? Some people are, okay. Well, I didn't see everybody's head up, so. State law says the total amount collected can only grow by 1% a year. There is some extra icing on the cake, and that is value of new construction doesn't count towards that. So if you get new construction, that's icing on top of the cake. So our property tax usually goes up by about 1.8% per year. Because of 1% that we can take plus new construction. So what's inflation been doing?
Tiny bit more.
A little bit more. So this is one of the reasons why you are all here with us today. There's a bill in the state legislature to increase it to 3%. But there's been bills just like that introduced in other sessions and they have not passed, so.
Can you return to the voters for a special levy?
Yeah.
I don't know that it's strategically smart, but, my history with the library system is it's required to meet these kinds of shortfalls. You have to return for a one-time dump of additional funds with a lid lift.
Yeah, so that is one revenue option is to go to the voters for a property tax levy lid lift. We'll probably hear that term a few more times over the next few weeks. property tax levy did lift. Not saying it's a recommendation right now, but it'll be one of the options that you'll probably be looking at.
And they're costly, I mean, returning to the voter costs.
Yeah.
There's the differential and the cost of just even doing it.
Yeah. So that's thanks for that, Paul, because the 1% is what the city council can do, councilmanically. I love that word, councilmanic.
Sounds kind of scary.
So they, so they have the authority to increase property tax by 1% as an elected body. Anything more than that, they have to go to the voters.
Except for fake.
Yeah, but that's a whole other.
But there is the one, yeah, other option of using
Yeah.
fake capacity, but.
Yeah,
Do you sense the likelihood of that 3% going anywhere?
I don't think it's gonna pass.
Are there any other, I've heard discussions of instituting a state income tax or things like that. Is there anything else that the state legislature is considering from a revenue
To
standpoint?
help our operating budget now. Yeah. The income tax has been floated over the years, but it's never gained any traction.
I think said something about it costs to do the levy limit. Is that just like the cost of putting it on the ballot and all that? Is that?
Exactly.
If it's on a general election, it doesn't cost as much.
Right, yeah, the more things are on there.
Yeah, but if we make a special election, if we're worthy of anything on the ballot, then it costs a chunk of money.
And there's always a strategy to why you go on one election cycle or another.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here's the breakdown of those utility taxes, rounded to 3 million on the other sheet. You can see our largest source of revenue are the electric utility taxes. Next is cable, which is decreasing.
Can I mention the electric?
Yes.
So that is 4%, so 4% of everybody's utility bill, goes to Kenmore. The max that a city can charge under state law is 6%. So we're 2% lower than the max allowed by state law. And gas is at 6, which is the max.
So presumably, if we bumped electric up to 6%, we'd get another third, so another 300,000.
Could satellite TV work in anyone that?
Yeah.
It was,
It's a pretty small market.
It's like cell phones. You know, we charge to put the facilities in, but we don't collect any revenue unless there's unless we have code that says we do.
Any on fiber?
So we are not allowed to tax internet. We're precluded by federal law. So we can't tax internet. We can tax it if it's video for cable TV. So a lot of cable TV comes in through fiber. And if it is, then we can tax it if it's for cable TV. But if it's for internet, hands off.
And assuming most of internet is used for YouTube and Netflix, isn't that a loophole to consider it?
That's beyond our ability.
Okay.
You'd have to.
Throw that at the feds.
Yeah, that's gonna be real
That's
expensive.
All right.
And more people are cutting their cable cords,
Mhm.
which is showing is a dip in revenue for us. Small bit, but still a bit.
Yeah, sorry.
We also used to charge cable tax for landlines. People are getting rid of their phones, their landline
Mhm.
phones.
May I ask a utilities question? We're currently in a rental in a different area of Kenmore from where we actually reside. And we have a tax that I don't have at my other residence, I believe. Maybe I'm confused. But there's something about sewer tax that you pay quarterly or something, and the folks renting to us said any house built from a certain date on has it. Because they had to extend sewer lines and they have to be subsidized by additional taxation to the homeowner.
That sounds like a local improvement district.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what I'm thinking is maybe your neighborhood wasn't on sewer. And so we all got together and said, hey, we all want to get on the sewer lines, so that they did all the infrastructure work to install it. And then the chances that you have to pay that back through an extra surcharge over so many years.
That's what it sounds like, but it's going to the district rather than to any of it to the city, right?
Yeah.
Directly a relationship with the district.
That's right.
Next one is our franchise fees. So, most of, our franchise fees come from water sewer and then, some from cable. Just informational for now. Charges for services, the breakdown of that 1.3 million, mostly comes from plan review and other fees. And then land use. And small dollars,
They all have access to this slide deck, right?
they will.
Okay.
I just finished it.
It's really good.
I can
It's really good.
save it in the shared folder.
Land use and plan review and other fees, is that would be both residential and commercial properties?
Other licenses and building permits, obviously our largest part of that are the building permits.
So like credit card processing fees, that's just a pass through, right? If we end up paying credit card company with it.
I think that's our portion that we keep.
Oh, okay.
That's our portion. And here's a lovely, you like charts? Here's a chart for you. See the breakdown. Obviously, property taxes is our biggest chunk at the 36% with sales tax. And then our utility taxes.
Here's a trick question. True or false, Kenmore charges a B&O tax on businesses. It's actually a true statement, but it's only charged on one sector, and that's heavy industrial. And only 2 businesses qualify in that category. Asphalt, and concrete. Yeah, so only 2 businesses in the city pay B&O tax. And we only get about $20,000 or $30,000 a year for that tax.
Both of them?
Combined.
So I read through everything, but I don't retain all the specifics about the projections. When you're looking at, what's Kenmore's capacity continuing to grow in building, in terms of building permits, residential and otherwise? Like, do we have enough land that you can project steady income from that over time? For well, that'd be new construction, but I mean, I'm wondering, and how frequently, given the fact that there was an economic downturn followed by a pandemic, are you seeing rebuilding or anything like that in terms of permitting for residences? And what did you project for that for up through 2028?
I kind of back from on the services question and then my estimated fees in terms of capacity for building. That's something that we have to plan for capacity, what kind of growth is anticipated. And that's part of the planning effort then. So you anticipate how much population are we going to take in 20 years, or how much employment are we going to take, and where is that going to go? And that's where there's a link then between the land use, the zoning, and how it's planned for us. But right now, which we'll get into a little bit more, we're in that process of looking forward 20 years to say how much capacity do we have and can we accommodate it? And the answer is yes, we can. So in terms of the numbers that we have, we can accommodate growth for 20 years for a target.
Which is long beyond the current.
Which is,
Okay, thank you.
When Samantha comes next time, she's head of development services, she can also help answer that question, because she projects revenues based on what she sees in the pipeline and what she sees coming down the road in the form of new developments or potential new developments.
Or, sorry to add a bit more work to the presentation, but before sharing it with us, would it be possible for specific concerned items to put a cap, to indicate if there's a cap, so the 1% we talked about for property taxes? Because when a model will exist, having also those caps there, so that we know that even if we wanted to, we can't go crazy because just legally it's not allowed.
Yeah, good idea.
Thanks.
So, when I looked at the 2022 budget, it said that we have like 49,000 in marijuana tax. Is that just off that one business that's there? What all do we have?
It's a distribution from the state. I believe it's by population.
So the state gathers the tax, it's my understanding, like the liquor and
Yeah.
now marijuana or cannabis tax, and then it gets redistributed by population, isn't it? Or is it by number of businesses in a?
It might be a combination of two, so we can find out. Remember that.
All right, moving on. Expenditures, yay. Okay, so these are expenditures by our departments. And so, those same departments that you saw earlier are listed here. And our largest cost, anybody see it? Police, right, it's that police, yeah, it's public safety, our police contract. It's our largest expense, and you can see it's quite a bit larger than all the others. And then boy, it's very close between, public works, parks and facilities and city manager.
They pay me a lot of money.
I was actually just gonna mention, I think.
Yeah.
Public consumption, people would assume that's the salary of a position, not the entire work plus salary of the department.
That's the manager department, because we actually are kind of a big department.
Uh-huh.
The city
It is,
manager.
absolutely, yeah. Yeah, these are all,
And on public safety, that's public safety and justice services, so that's police, court, jail,
yeah, it's not.
prosecutor, public defender.
Fire.
Special revenue funds, so what are special revenue funds? They're revenues, that are accounted for because they are restricted and they have to be designated separately from the other funds, so they finance certain activities. So we in this group are going to be focusing on the street fund and then strategic opportunities fund, which is the one that we want to try to rebuild. And then some of these are additional ones that we're highlighting here, but just note that in that binder we gave you, all of our funds are listed, all types of funds are listed in that binder. They're not all included in this presentation because it's too much information.
Last time we told the story of the Strategic Opportunities Fund, how it got created and everything. So, the street fund and the Strategic Opportunities Fund are fed by the general fund. So general fund and these two funds are the ones we're hoping to get your help with.
And then, you want to talk about ARPA?
Yeah, ARPA is a newly created fund. It stands for American Rescue Plan Act. And it's a result of the federal government depositing $6.4 million into our bank account from the pandemic. Literally, we didn't have to do anything, we didn't have to apply for it or anything, they just plopped $6.4 million into our bank account.
With lots of restrictions.
Not a ton, actually, not a ton of restrictions. And so when you spend $6.4 million, you need resources, you need help doing that. And so you can charge staff time spending the money to that revenue. And so the city went through a pretty robust. We laugh about that word. Pretty intense, community engagement process on how to spend ARPA money. We did the balancing act tool and we did some other stuff online. Anyway, but as a result of that effort, we, the council decided how to spend the money, the $6.4 million. And I think when Stephanie Lukash comes and gives her presentation, she can talk a little bit more about it. But of the 6.4, the city council decided to give $1 million of it in cash assistance directly to low-income residents. Each household got, it's been a few years now, each household got about $1,500 or so. These were low income below the, I think, 50% AMI, area median income. So $1 million went to that. And then the city carved out 3.2 million for the affordable housing project here at the Shell property, which is proposed Plymouth project. And then the remaining amount is staff time and various other programs. So there's money we're giving to businesses and to various social service agencies, but all in response to the pandemic. So we actually hired 2 city employees to run all these programs. And one is an assistant to the city manager, ARPA. And the other one is management analyst, ARPA. And ARPA money is one-time money, right? So when we hired these employees, did we hire them forever? No, they're limited term employees and their terms expire at the end of this year. And they knew that, that's in their offer letter and stuff. There's several $100,000 of ARPA that's unallocated that the council hasn't decided how to spend it yet. And so we need to be going through that process pretty soon on how to spend the last several $100,000 of ARPA money.
So Rob, I think I heard you, or maybe you can respond to it. That last time we were here, Plymouth was over. And now it sounds like Plymouth is not over.
Yeah,
So what's happening
yeah.
there?
I guess I'll tell that story, yeah. So council voted it down 6-1 on December 11th. But development agreements, they require some sort of an ordinance, whether pass or fail. They voted down the yes ordinance. If they, to make a final decision, they need to either have a note, an ordinance denying it, approving the original, or modifying it. So they actually have 3 options before them tomorrow night. And there's been a desire from some council members to bring it back and with modifications. So tomorrow night, Plymouth is proposing some modifications based on what they heard from all the feedback. And council's going to decide, do we adopt it as was originally proposed? Do we enter into a community engagement process to look at the modifications? Or do we say no to everything and direct staff to come back with a ordinance rejecting the whole thing? So that's what's going to be in front of the council tomorrow night.
Let's say that project goes forward. Is there, because we talked last time about using opportunity funds, but not recognizing there could be ongoing operational costs to the city and budgeting for that or projecting for that. Is this something that would have ongoing operational costs to the city?
No,
I didn't think so.
no. Unless you want to count things like police calls and things like that.
But that essentially is already embedded in the costs. We have.
And we have similar costs at our other low income supportive housing places also, just
Yeah, or any housing for that matter, right?
Right.
We've, in the last decade, we've had 2 murders. And they were in single family residential homes. So,
Not to mention that police and emergency services for unhoused people is much higher than for housed people, so
Absolutely.
that's it.
there's the flip
So
side.
there are the council members as well, so the consider since, right, that have been installed since
Yeah.
that vote.
3
and-
Yes.
Yeah, 3 since that vote, yeah, so they have to come up to speed. Okay, but one thing I want to say about ARPA, those 2 positions, remember how the positions expire at the end of this year? Those 2 positions are not in her forecast. So if you want to put those 2 positions in her forecast, it makes it worse.
But they're paid for on ARPA money anyway,
Only ARPA,
so,
yeah.
Through the end of this year, but they're not forecasted any further.
well, because they're not employed.
Is there? Are you pointing this out because you think that those 2 employees are essential for our go forward operations, even if they're not directly?
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, because they
Yeah,
weren't
that's
hired
the city.
specifically for ARPA, they were already here working, right?
And there are still a few $100,000. Does it have to be
We-
expended?
we
And could it be
really-
encumbered versus expended?
Yeah, so we really like having those two around. It's a lot of work for us. Like, for example, Garrett runs our DEI committee. So they have taken on some operational duties in addition to the ARPA. And, you know, both of them do analyst type work, and it's so nice to be able to have somebody to give analyst type work too when you need it done. In the past, before we had those two positions, we at the department head level were doing analyst work. We still do a lot of it actually. Or we were hiring interns, which is a very inexpensive and effective way to get analyst work done, like take a grad student from UW or some other university. They actually, with not a lot of handholding, they can do good analyst work. And so you hire them for the summer, you know, and pay them $20 an hour. Yeah.
So what do you view as, because if they are focused on ARPA projects, if they remain on staff, do you have do you have a vision for what they would do going forward? And like, what is the value to the city of that? Like, I guess, just generally.
We don't yet. So much of their workload is ARPA right now, and that will go away when the ARPA programs go away. So I'm not saying that, you know, you have to have them. They're nice to have employees, and they're really good, solid employees.
It's always hard when you have those people that you've relied on and they're indispensable in so many ways, and then they're gonna go. Wait, you know, they were doing so much more than just this, you know, small focus of our part.
There's always, there's a cost of, like, there's a transaction cost, right? If you have someone who is performing at 120% of the average employee or 150% of the average employee, and you let them go because you don't have something immediately for them to do, but then a year or two later, you want to hire that person, you may not be able to hire someone that is as effective as that person, not to mention it'll cost money to hire them. So sometimes taking that hit in the meantime to say, no, we're gonna just hold on to this person if we can, is a smarter financial decision than just
Yeah.
letting them go and trying to save their money.
Because it equals the onboarding cost.
Exactly.
And I believe, you know, with the analytics, you know, having more data driven decision is really important, and both of these people are really coming from it from that perspective, which is, I think, needed. It's always needed almost anywhere I've been, you know, to have those people that are really good at that.
Yeah. So if Plymouth is an ARPA project and Plymouth moves forward, does it get classified as something else, or has it gone past the stage that the ARPA funds supported employees for? I'm trying to think of the timeline of that project and the city voting, let's say in, because that's where it would apply, versus the loss of those employees.
That money that is earmarked for the project is for those different costs. It's not for personal costs.
Oh, it's not even marked for those.
No.
Okay.
So once we pay the money, we don't have to worry about that part.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
3.2 million will just go directly to help with the construction cost.
I see. Okay, I thought it was funding those positions.
Not that piece of it.
Okay.
And what's remaining of the 6.4 million that is spending those.
And if,
I'd be,
sorry, go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
No, and just if they decide not to go forward with it, I'm assuming those 3.2 million are repurposable for something else.
Yeah, can I get really nerdy on ARPA for a second?
That's the
Okay.
point of this.
So, so ARPA does have this list of ways you can spend the money, like Katrina was talking about, but it's kind of restricted. And one of them is for affordable housing and, you know, business assistance and things like that. Well, guess what else is allowable under ARPA? Police. You can charge all your money to police, no questions asked. And then what you can do is you can take that freed up money that you were gonna spend on police and use it for whatever the heck you want.
Because now it's general fund money.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not federal dollars anymore.
So it's basically fungible.
And so council just passed,
So, yeah.
council just passed a amendment to the budget or to the ARPA fund the other night that where we can charge it to police and then it frees it up. So I'm not saying we'll do this, but we could spend that 3.2 if Plymouth doesn't happen. We could spend that 3.2 million or any other remaining part of the ARPA on flowers on Bothell Way if we wanted to. Or maybe we could send it over to the whole property, the Imagine Housing. If Plymouth does not go through, council will need to go through a process on what do we do with this 3.2 million. There was a rumor floating around that we'll lose it, we won't lose it.
I do have a question though, because we have multiple affordable housing projects and those are often funded by grants. Excuse me. Is there any implication of not going forward with the Plymouth project where we will lose other, not ARPA, but other funding sources, other grants associated with other projects because they view us as a risk given the backlash that we've seen.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the housing grant world, the answer is yes. But not, it won't affect other grants, it won't affect John's ability to get sidewalk grants. But Commerce, Washington State Department of Commerce, that hands out the housing grants, they might think twice before giving us money for the Imagine project 2 doors down.
Yep. Does that have any implications to the general fund? Or is that all kind of isolated?
Definitely general fund thing.
Okay, moving on.
Well, I'm sorry, one
Oh,
last question
yep.
about this, because it's such a big project. When is this meeting will have a determination of something of the 3 categories you mentioned? Either let's adopt it as it was, let's dump it, or let's modify.
Go through a process tomorrow.
Okay. But that'll be known at the end of the meeting tomorrow.
I should hope so.
Okay, is there anything in there that affects our work here? I don't think so. Is it?
No, just potentially moving our dates around,
But not
not what.
any recommendations we would know.
Are there other term limited employees who face end of term at the end of 2024?
Yes. Our farmer's market manager, Nicole Suarez, she's actually been with us in part-time temporary capacity for a few years. We hired her to help us with summer events and things like that. She's awesome. And so she actually came up with the idea to do a farmer's market a couple of years ago. And we said, run with it. And we extended her position another couple of years to run the farmer's market and help with other events too. She doesn't just do farmer's market. But her position was mainly based on the farmer's market. And we funded farmer's market out of Strategic Opportunities Fund, which, as you know, is one-time money. So the term of her employment ends at the end of this year as well. And what we said is, hey, let's spend the money to jumpstart a farmer's market. Let's run it for 2 or 3 years, get it really successful, and then hand it off to the private sector. Guess what? That plan is working. So Woodinville Farmers Market their board just voted to take on our farmers market. So Nicole, bless her heart, she's working herself out of a job. Which I don't want to do because she's awesome. So we'll stay tuned on that. But yeah, her term of employment ends because our funding for the farmers market ends at the end of this biennium. What'll happen is, so cities do typically subsidize farmers markets a little bit. And so I think Woodinville subsidizes its farmers markets to about $10,000 or $20,000 a year. Shoreline subsidizes theirs to about $30,000 a year. Lake Forest Park probably in the $20,000 range. So we will also subsidize the Woodinville. That's in this projection here. We have a $20,000 to $40,000 subsidy of the farmer's market in 2025 and beyond. But right now, the farmer's market is costing us north of $100,000 a year. Because of the staffing and everything. So,
Yeah.
I need.
Okay, street fund. Remember, we are looking at both street fund and the general fund and how to solve, future problems. So the street fund currently, in this biennium has a $3.8 million, budget. We do maintenance / operations, out of those dollars. Our main revenue sources are the gas tax and the general fund. And new or potential revenue streams, we increased the vehicle tab fee in 2023. So we doubled it, so from $20 to $40 per tab. And that's bringing in about $360,000 a year. And then we have in the last 2020 FSP, it was proposed to add a 0.1 to 0.2 increase in the transportation sales tax. And in the forecast documents, we forecasted at 0.15. As we mentioned, I think last time it came up, I believe here, that 0.1%, the council can do it. How, Rob? Dynamically. Or else it has to go to the voters if it's higher than the point. So, that's.
On our vehicle tabs, they added a thing where if you're hybrid or if you're electric or the hybrid electric combined, we have additional fees that we're
God,
putting in
yes.
there now.
God, yes.
What's it called? What?
No, yes, my tabs are very expensive. I'm
So
agreeing.
it's $75 fee per car. And so, and it says that, for right now, it's going into this fund where they're trying to promote electrification. But as of 2025, it's going to the motor vehicle fund. So does basically the idea I think was that we're not paying gas tax. So it's a way of collecting money from us still. So is there a way that trickles down to the cities as of 2025?
That's a really interesting
That's
question.
very interesting.
Sorry.
Wow.
Yeah, because the gas tax is gonna start going down. But that was a way of the state still collecting money from us.
Of course.
Yeah.
I don't have an answer.
I don't either.
Okay,
Just a good question. Okay, so what's happening in our strategic opportunities fund? Rob has spoken about this, so here are the numbers. In 2018, you can see we had a little over $2 million in fund balance, which grew to about 3 million in 2019, and then it's been on a steep decline from being used and not having the extra revenues in the general fund to replenish. And so we would like to build this back up. Just so you know, Rob hasn't heard this, so the numbers, I don't have the numbers here in front of me, but for 2023, I think that we're estimated at 200 and something thousand is in the budget, like 223 or something, and then only 30,000 for 2024. But it looks like we're actually gonna end 2023 instead of at 220 something at maybe 500 to 600,000. So it's not as awful as we thought in the budget, so.
You know, one thing we should get this group is a listing of the ways we've spent this money over the years. I think that might be interesting to you, just for you to see how we've spent it in each year. Remember, it's money for one-time purposes. So we haven't charged our operating budget to this. So like, see the big drop in 2022, does anyone know what that is? It helped pay for Holt purchase and pay for all of the Cozy Inn purchase. So those were the two main reasons why it dropped in 2022.
Cozy Inn, was that the one where the deck was falling down?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, right there, just right on the.
Bottom line there. building is gone now.
Okay, capital projects and enterprise. I'm just gonna quickly this is here just for informational only. We're not gonna be diving into these funds. But we want you to have awareness. And again, there's a little bit more information in your binders about these funds. So our current capital project funds, that we have on the books are for transportation, parks, surface water management, and city facilities, also known as Public Works Operations Center. And then our enterprise funds, which is where we provide a service and we charge through assessments, so swim fees. So surface water management fund is an enterprise fund.
And Richard is gonna come talk to
Yes,
us.
Richard will give you all the information you want on those.
So can I talk about swim just for a second? So like I said, maybe last meeting is surface water fund is not something that you guys will be needing to solve. Because it's its own self-sustaining enterprise fund that does not rely on the general fund. It's fully paid for with surface water utilities. And the city council just recently adjusted the surface water utility rates to take care of the surface water fund. So why is Richard coming to talk to you? Number one, I think it's interesting for you to know what this utility does. It's pretty interesting if you ask me. But second, for the first time starting last year, Richard is responsible for some general fund stuff. So what is that? So Richard is the environmental services director. He's in charge of this surface water fund. But he is now also responsible for all things environmental, including climate action plan. And including the climate action plan manager who reports to him. And she is general fund money. So that's something for you to be aware of is for the first time starting this year, last year, Richard now has some general fund money he's responsible for. And it's mainly the climate action plan.
Okay, you've heard this before, but just to recap, never heard enough that, we are, gonna be focusing on our reserve level as we work in this group. And so, our policy is that we shall maintain reserves of not less than 20% of our operating expenditures. Of course, we want to offset any potential revenue shortfalls. Make sure that there's plenty of money to pay for expenditures if we have cash flow issues and any unanticipated emergencies. So combined, the general fund and street fund in 2023 had 3.6 million in reserve, or sorry. Yes, they needed to have 3.6 million according to the budget, and we're projecting to have 3.7 million. And then 2024, 3.7 million required and 4.2 million projected. Debt. I think it's very important for you guys to understand what debt we have, because we have talked earlier about potentially a property tax levy lift, which would create more taxes on people, right? So what is currently happening as far as debt and payments that we're making and interest? So currently we have first two unlimited tax general obligation bonds, which are related to the Walkways Waterways project. Range between 2 to 4%.
Those were voter approved back in 2016.
Voter approved. The residents are paying for this. It's a separate, separate property, what's it called? Something property tax, additional property tax.
Excess levy.
Thank you, it's an excess levy. We have COPs, to the tune of, $2.6 million that was issued at 2.42%. I should probably go to the next slide, because then it talks about, the COPs were for the Public Works Operations Center. We have 6.6 million in LTGO bonds, for the acquisition and design of the Public Works Center, and that's at 3.45%. And then we are going to be going out for 12.6 million in more bonds for the construction of the Public Works Operations Center. We anticipate it'll probably be less than 5% was the last update I had. We planned in the in the paperwork at 5%, but the numbers are, a little bit lower right now. And then up above, I kind of skipped over the culvert replacement. That's at a whopping 1.66%, so that's a very nice low, debt.
And that's
Percentage.
phase one of the Public Works Operations Center?
That's phase one.
Okay.
Which, if you know, some of you may not know what phase one means. Phase one would get us the full building that we need to house everybody and they could fully function based on phase one. Phase two goes into additional components, which we mentioned.
Yeah, and it won't be built anytime soon. So phase one is kind of it for
Yeah.
many years.
Yeah.
But see the last bullet there, none of this debt or the debt service on this debt touches the general fund and the street fund. So it's the surface water
Mhm.
or real estate excise tax fund. None of it touches general fund or street fund.
So, so the public works, that is one of those things where we were contracting parks and maintenance, and now we're bringing that in-house. And so I'd be curious to know what the run rate cost of that contract was that was all going to the general fund versus this is a big capital outlay. And that capital has been funded by by these bonds. But then how much is like ongoing operating costs is hitting the general fund versus the contract fund? You would expect that with this much capital going into it, that the operating costs would be smaller. Is that true?
Yeah, we ran that analysis back when we took that over from Lake Forest Park. And on an operating level, we're cheaper than what Lake Forest Park was charging us. Don't remember, it was like, felt like it was a couple $100,000 a year cheaper for operating only. But the cost of this operations center is making the whole thing more expensive.
Right.
So if we didn't have to build this operations center for them, we'd be, money ahead. But this operations center is making it more expensive than a happy state with Lake Forest Park.
Got it. But the general fund is still benefiting from that savings, but if you add the operating costs in the general fund plus the cost to service the debt, then it's more expensive.
That's right.
But the debt is being serviced by a special levy.
Capital fund.
Got it. Okay.
That's just
So
Go ahead.
yeah, so that's like a smart budgeting thing, given the limitations of funding the general fund versus what we're able to do here, but thinking total tax burden, it's more expensive.
But in this case, Lake Forest Park requested the vote. We didn't.
Oh,
have much
so you don't
choice.
have a choice?
They did, they're the ones who notified us that we were going bye-bye. It was a mutual thing though.
Yeah, I mean, both cities were getting big enough that it made sense.
We both said to each other, it's not you, it's me.
I'll tip my hat and say that I think we get better levels of service, at least in my experience, since we took it in-house.
Thank you for that. So that's a question that council members have asked over the years since we took it over as well. What's the cost difference? And we can show the cost difference. But it's also apples to oranges in terms of level of service, like Lake points out. It is like night and day from what we're getting now in house compared to what we got from Lake Forest Park.
Yeah, and we live on a small cul-de-sac and we see the street sweeper far more often now.
All right, almost last slide.
And then 3 more presentations.
Sorry.
I'll stop asking questions.
Investments in cash. So our investment portfolio, we have 6.5 million in securities. We have money in LGIP, which is the local government investment pool. We have 16 million there, and in other banks, we have approximately 5.7 million. I mentioned this to Rob, and I don't see this here, and I don't remember why I did it, but so, interest income is very high, compared to what we've been having before. We budgeted for the whole city and our interest gets distributed out to other, I think it's in my other presentation, that's why, because I've seen it, but anyway, I'll tell you now. So interest income, we budgeted 300 and something thousand for the bank, right? So 150, right, each year. Anybody want to guess how much we made this year, just in 1 year? 2023, yeah.
Double that.
We say double
It's
it,
gotta be double.
1.1 million.
Yeah.
1.1 million, and we budgeted 150, so it's like 10 times. It was crazy, yeah, so that's a nice little extra windfall that we weren't expecting.
But does this represent part of the cash reserve? Is this part of the 20%?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's for all funds, not just general street.
And any more
So
questions?
you're gonna update your forecast.
Yes.
With that better number.
Yeah.
So maybe your job just got a little easier.
So I know on the, budget forecast, it says we're bringing in like 90 to 100,000 a year for the gambling tax. So. So I know that's the card room, like the bowling alley. Is anything, what else gets included in that?
I just know I've heard people do pull tabs, so, and I don't know what else.
Oh,
It's mainly pull tabs at the bar called Tabs.
uh-huh,
And I thought the bowling alley was spacing that out.
the card room.
I thought they did back in like 2010.
Well, that's.
Oh, they did?
But I think there's.
Oh.
some pull tabs.
Oh, pull tab, I think we might have 3 places
Yeah.
that do pull tabs.
Maybe This one and then maybe the Savage Moose maybe.
And the claw machine at Safeway is also.
So we don't get anything off the NFL betting things that they do online or anything like that?
But I think you're on to something.
Yeah, start fighting Congress.
We would through partial sales tax now.
Yeah, if there's sales tax, yes.
So I've got a question. Somebody brought up the grocery store. So we've got this whole Kroger merger thing going on. And my understanding is if it's a go, that there may be some grocery stores shut down, possibly in Kenmore, because there are some that are very close to each other.
Mm.
Does that affect?
Yeah.
Sales tax revenue
It
too?
does. I have not heard this.
Yeah, the state. I think
Washington
this-
AG is fighting it.
Ferguson's fighting it,
Oh.
but, it is,
We
yeah.
have more than just Safeway.
If Safeway and if Kroger and Safeway Albertson merge, they would close 104 by anti-monopoly, antitrust, they'd close 104 grocery stores in the state of Washington, majority in Western. And there's something about the distance between them that would dictate which ones close. Or that something would have
But
to.
yeah, usually in these types of situations, they sell to another.
Yeah, and they are
Different.
potentially selling to an organization called CNS, and that organization does more warehouse style stuff. And the last time that happened was to Hagen, and Hagen went bankrupt. So I thought it'd be a fair concern for Kenmore in terms of
But
protection, so. it's curious
Safeway
about
is
it.
bigger than the one in Lake Forest Park, right? So would we be kept?
This I don't know.
But it's also older than the other Safeway that's just over the hill.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, and it's not city specific.
Yeah.
It's specific to the systems of
Right.
grocery stores, but it affects city sales tax.
Food is not taxed. But packaged things and non-food things are taxed. But yes, Safeway does generate a decent amount of sales tax for us.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it seems like just as a society, there's certain things that like we just accept there to be taxes on, even though we might complain about them. So like airports and rental cars. So do we get much revenue out of the airport or the rental car place?
The airport, no, just property tax and utility taxes like any other business. But I don't know about the rental car. I think rental car taxes go to the states. That's big, man, Katrina. I have councilman like freedom.
Yeah.
You're asking some really interesting questions.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I mean, I know we only have one. I don't know if there's more than that, but I know we have
One on
one.
Lakeville.
Yeah, that limousine, rental car, shuttle bus place. I mean, it seems like it should be flexible, but.
Mm.
I don't know, I just had a rental car, I paid $122 and $78 in taxes and fees and such.
So that concludes my presentation for Budget 101. I will put this out. It'll probably be in a couple of places. It'll be on our main webpage, but also I'll put it in the shared folder that we now have. And let me know if you wake up in the middle of the night with questions that you didn't think of to ask. Or if there's anything else you want to make sure we don't forget to answer that you asked, feel free to send that via email to the whole group. And we'll try to make sure we can get some answers on it. If we can. John, are you ready?
Now you got 5 minutes.
So John is our engineer.
One of
Title you go
many.
by.
Well, I'm the engineering director, also city engineer for the city. So I do, my group's responsible for ensuring safe, efficient operations of the right of way. We do that through the road standards, traffic data analysis collection, right of way permitting down the right of way. And we also deal with Title 12 and 10 within the KMC. So we're pretty much responsible for what gets built in the right of way and making sure that it stays as safe and efficient as possible. So our core responsibilities for my group is we're responsible for the transportation capital program, which deals with all things built in the right of way, roads, sidewalks, bridges, signals, you name it, that kind of thing. We're also responsible for pavement management. So we do overlays and pavement seals, crack seals. The traffic engineering within my group as well too. So traffic analysis, traffic calming, site distance studies, crash analysis. We also do all the utility permitting. So all the utilities in the city go through my group. We also are responsible for managing the franchise agreements that we have with each one of those utilities. And with the exception of garbage, garbage is in our operations group, so I don't do garbage. Right-of-way management, so all of our codes, our standards in the right-of-way, code compliance, all of that falls within my group, and then transportation planning, so ped bike, our ped bike program, ADA accessibility transition plan, and then any long short range plans, planning like within the comp plan, there's the transportation element, that's my group. And then we have a 6-year transportation improvement plan that we have to put together every year. We'll take care of that as well too. So within my group, I've got, including myself, we've got 7 folks. I've got 3 engineers, 2 senior civil engineers, a capital project manager. I've got the city traffic engineer, a right-of-way inspector, and an administrative specialist. The civil engineers, the capital projects manager, they take care of our capital project, our transportation capital improvement program. The capital project, or one of the civil engineers does our pavement management program. Our traffic engineer does the traffic engineering. Our right-of-way inspector does the utility permitting. I take care of right-of-way management and transportation planning. And then our admin helps all of us stay efficient and out of trouble. So some of the main things that we have in expenses are, of course, our capital projects, which are primarily paid out of the capital fund, or they are paid out of the capital fund. Then we have utility permitting, so all the effort and time we need to do to review permits, inspect them, dealing with franchise agreements, all that. There's the pavement management, so we have to assess the condition of our pavement. We have to determine what needs an overlay or what might need seals. Just part of that. So then in traffic safety, so we've got our traffic calming program, again, our crash data analysis. We do regular site distance studies, anything dealing with traffic, We manage signal operations. We contract with King County to do all the maintenance and adjust it, but we are the ones that are looking at it to make sure that everything's operating properly. We talk to King County to make changes if we need them done. And they also will suggest changes to us as well. Then right-of-way management, and we do a lot of code compliance. So making sure everyone's following the rules. So we have to go up there and manage that, and also generating our standards. I've got standard details I have to maintain. I've got the ADA transition plan I have to maintain. Our that's actually transportation planning, but I also have the code, Title 10 and 12, that I have to make sure looks is up to date. Transportation planning, of course. I do the like I said, the consultant costs and staff costs for doing the transportation element. That's once every 10 years. So just finished it, so I don't have to worry about that for a while. Transportation improvement plan, I do that, and that takes time, of course, to do that. And then we have general engineering expenses, just the general cost for us to operate a department, which also includes engineering services. As Rob said, we contract that a lot, and so we contract out for specialized engineering services that we can't do in-house.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Maybe you'll get to this later, but when I was on the task force last time, one of the big issues we were trying to address was we had sort of some catching up to do on road maintenance.
Yes.
And so part of it was basically funding, not only getting us back to a high level of quality for pavement, but then also funding an ongoing. Are we to a point where we feel like the budget, the ongoing budget is enough to maintain the level that we want? Or
So I do have a slide.
okay. Happy to wait.
Okay, once we get there, I'll talk a little bit more in depth about that, answer your question. So first, we've got our capital projects. So we've got several expenses related to that. Our project managers charge to capital projects along with myself, our admin, and then of course the actual design and construction of those capital projects. We have roughly about $410,000 per year that go towards that expense, not including the cost of projects. And those the revenue sources for that are typically from REIT, transportation impact fees, and then grants. 2021, we secured 1.3 million, 2022, 9.8 million, 2023, $4.7 million in grants. We apply every single year, try to get what we do. That's kind of becoming one of our biggest revenue sources for our projects, our grant monies. We don't put in anywhere near that amount of money to build the sidewalks. Almost every project we've done, with the exception, I think, of the walkways and waterways, was done mostly through grant money. So
John is our most revenue generating employee that we have. John brings in many millions of dollars every year.
Didn't we just get like 6 million that I saw for more sidewalks?
Yeah, something like that.
yeah, we got about $7 million. Yeah.
The bridge cost $43 million. John got most of that through security grants.
Is there predictability in the amount of, because I saw a high variability year over year. Is there predictability in forecasting that can happen, or it's just?
It's how well you ran the grant. It's dependent upon how many people actually apply, what kind of projects you're submitting, and how much money is available. There's so many factors, and each year it's a surprise.
Okay, but therefore not something we can factor in moving forward.
No, that is correct. We can't factor it in there, but we also are able to project several years into the future. Each project takes roughly 3 years. And so we know 3 to 4 years how we're going to be spending that time. And so we apply every year for money, and hopefully we expand. And I'm also making changes into the department to do some things in-house. If we wind up seeing a shortfall in work, then we'll just pivot to doing in-house design, which then we don't pay consultants, and we still have.
No, and that's amazing, and kudos. It's more just in our job of trying to understand what the budget will look like. There will necessarily, in that case, be a disconnect of many millions between what we can model and what will actually happen because of grants.
Well, and within the capital program, there is no general fund
No.
money going to that, and no street fund money going. So it's completely something different,
Okay.
but it is an expense that that's helps pay for, as I showed in there, 75% of 3 of my staff get paid for through that, as well as myself, my admin. So a lot of my staff gets paid through other sources, doesn't hit as much in the general fund. So that's kind of what I'm.
Is there any risk that if we don't get grants, it sounds like those projects are out for several years. So it sounds like the risk of potentially having to pay those staff out of the general fund because they don't have capital projects is relatively low.
Right now, it is relatively low. If ever that were to change, then it would be a council decision as to what we do.
And how far out, I guess, you said that those projects are 3 years out. So we're thinking on a time horizon of what are we, 6 years into the future? And so like on that time horizon, is that something that we should consider or?
I would say it isn't something that should necessarily be worried about right now. I've got sufficient funding and work to get them through 2027. So I'm hoping, because with that transportation improvement bill that came out, there's several billion dollars available each year.
Oh.
And so I am assuming that when I apply for the next round of grants, I will get at least 2 projects. And based off of my projections, I only need 2 projects for every grant cycle. So I'm pretty confident that we'll be successful in getting grant funds enough to keep that portion of the group active. So, yeah, then with.
But in addition to these grants, we've also been, I think, getting a lot of money. I've heard over the years from county, state, and federal sources. And it seems like our former mayor was doing a lot of advocating at the federal, state, and county level to get that. So now that he is our former mayor, and I know our new mayor is probably doing similar advocating, but our former mayor did an amazing job of getting us money before. So is there any plans for how we're gonna try to keep that money flowing in?
Right now, it's me.
Okay.
And if it gets to the point where there are certain areas where we do work with, we bring in other help. For example, there's a request for federal money through our representatives, and it's earmarked money. And we work with with folks to do that. It isn't just us. Rob's more familiar with how that process goes, and I've asked money before, never got it. So I think we're looking at getting some culvert money. But that's right now, most everything else has been pretty much me getting the money. Our former mayor helped us with money like for the bridge and keeping us in the front view with like Sound Transit. So advocating for those things, but a lot of it's been my group saying we want some money, and then informing council, hey, make sure you plug it for us. And so and again, he was very instrumental in being in a lot of these groups, but I'm not sure what's going to happen at this point forward, because I'm not sure who's on what committee. I'm likely going to be on one of the review boards for grants. So it works for me. So we'll see what happens with that. And we've got another one of my staff members is on another review group, but it's federal dollars, and federal money is getting harder and harder to be successful in getting qualified much. So we go there for state money. So
Just in planning ahead. If John decided to leave at some point, we would need to hire a grant writer and a.
Very likely.
I do all the grant writing myself for the most part, but it's a little work. Utility permitting, roughly our expenses are about $147,000 per year. My railroad inspector spends about 55% of his time with that. My admin about 40%, me 7%. And we have annual software. We spend about $3,000. These are all permit fee generated expenses. And so we collect permit fees to cover all this cost. In 2021, we had about $151,000 worth of permit fees, and then 180 in 22 and 185 in 2023. So we're tracking higher than what we're spending. And some of the reason why we're also high is we charge standard fees, but this also includes fines and excess fees that utilities wind up having to pay for either not following the rules or asking for accelerated reviews. So that's higher cost on top of that. So we wind up billing a lot more than just the standard fee. So that's one of the reasons why we're a bit higher.
And this is one area where Jobs Department does touch general street funds.
Yeah.
Street fund.
Pavement management. So right now, we tracking roughly about 1,033,000 per year. So a little over $2 million. In the original package, I think it was about 2.5 million per year. But given how much that was, we kind of found a little happy medium between what we were doing versus what we said to keep ourselves at the very high level. So right now currently we're budgeted that. We've got that takes about 40% of my project manager, 5% of my time, 5% of admin. We spend about $687,000 per year that go to the overlays and about $250,000 for seals. REIT covers a big chunk of that. We also have Kate, the automated photo enforcement program. So the revenues generated to that are supposed to be going towards within the last FSP, it was to go towards pavement preservation and to traffic safety. So that covers our traffic engineer as well too. So Kate has been earmarked for that. The general fund, we're looking at about $250,000 for slurry seals and about $26,000 in staff time. And that $26 in staff time is to manage and design the seal work. So all the seals, pavement sealing work that we have is coming out of the general fund. And then right now, grants, we did get grants to do some overlay this last year, but I don't anticipate getting any this coming year, but we're hoping to get some for the following year. Just depends on how well I can write the grant application.
When you do get grants, what is the range that we might get?
Depends on the project. I've gotten grants as low as 300,000 and as much as 10 million. So it depends. I'm actually going to be applying for a $20 million grant. So it just depends on the project, depends on resources.
Specifically for pavement management?
For pavement management, the highest I've gotten is $920,000.
Okay.
The lowest I've gotten is about 325,000. So yeah, it's really, really difficult to get grants for pavement management. Nobody wants to pay for that.
Yeah.
So what I have to do is I have to get creative. I have to throw in a whole bunch of other little things and find just the right project where they will say, oh, we like that, we'll give you money. So I may have a street where the pavement is in poor condition, but I have another street where it's a little bit better, but I'm having other things going on that I might be able to get grant money for that, which then I can use to do that project. So that's kind of how I have to be strategic on what I apply for. And sometimes it doesn't fall in line with what we plan, but it's money's money.
Right.
So the staff costs here are like your design and oversight of the project, but the actual public works crews that are doing that comes out of a different budget, right?
So the public works crews, they will do things like filling potholes, street sweeping, that comes out of the street fund. So yeah, that's completely separate from this.
You usually hire an outside contractor to do these work.
So for the construction work, yes. Right now, some of we've been doing the pavement work, the pavement overlay work with a consultant and the pavement seal in-house. My plan is after we get through these bigger cyber projects is to take the pavement overlay work as an in-house design. It's usually fairly simple to do, and we can get a lot more bang for our buck if we do it in-house. So
so bang for buck, are you expecting that we would maintain the same level of spend, but just be able to accomplish more or achieve some level of savings?
The hope is to do more with what we have.
Okay.
Again, it just depends on how busy we are. Right now, I have to consult those out because we have too much work. And if things get light, this is one of the items that's going to get switched to an in-house design. So that we can keep someone busy, but still pay them less than it would pay us to have a consultant do it. So.
It takes discipline to maintain your pavement, your asphalt, because A, it's not sexy. And B, it looks great, it looks fine. So why do we need to do anything? You actually have to do things to extend the life of your asphalt, and that costs money. But it's not something that people are excited about spending on, because it looks great and it's not sexy.
You can usually get maybe 10 years out of payment before you have to do something. If you don't do something with it, you're grinding and overlaying. If you do a pavement seal, you can extend it even longer before you have to actually do a grind and overlay. Eventually, you will have to do a grind and overlay, but we're trying to extend when we have to do that to a later date so that we save money. So
Are there any areas that grind and overlay is expected in the next 6 years?
yes, we're planning to use the money to grind and overlay 61st Avenue once we do the sidewalk replacement work out there. So we're all gonna combine that into that. And I'm gonna apply for grant money to try and get funds to pay for that.
Got it.
Along with other things, so cross my fingers on that one. And then we've got our Arrowhead sidewalk project. We're going to be using the next overlay cycle to overlay a portion of that road because it's in pretty bad condition. So we're combining these into projects. It's efficient. It's using one consultant, saving us a lot of money, trying to being strategic and finding locations where we can combine work so we can do things at a less cost.
Got it. But generally, those more expensive grind and overlay projects, it sounds like we're looking for opportunities to pay for that out of the capital infrastructure type funds as opposed to, can you just switch back one slide? Yeah, so like the pavement overlay, the pavement seals, like this pavement management section, this $1 million a year would not necessarily be able to accommodate like a grind and replace. Sorry, not being super clear here. The dollars that I'm looking at here sound like pavement life extension. Whereas
Maintenance, not repairs.
whereas like big street repair, like we've extended it as long as we can. Now we gotta,
Overlay.
yeah, grind and overlay.
Yeah, so there are three different ways to address pavement. There's either a seal, which seals it and prevents moisture from getting down and helps extend the life. Then there's an overlay where the top layer starts to ravel and fall apart. You replace it, new pavement, all things good. Then there's reconstruction where the damage to the pavement has gone all the way down and you just can't overlay. And so you have to remove the whole thing and rebuild the road.
Got it. Okay, I'm misusing terms. So
Yeah.
So that one, the most egregious, like you have to replace the whole road. Is there anything again in that like 6-year time horizon where okay.
So the purpose for doing this is to avoid doing that.
Right.
Now, there are still going to be situations where we are going to have to address that. For example, we just overlaid 169th Street. And when we overlaid that or ground that whole layer, we found large patches where it was just dirt. There's less than 2 inches of pavement. So we had to cut that out, build it up, and do a reconstruction in small areas. But
Okay.
I don't know of any places. The only place that we thought might be a problem was on 73rd, but we didn't see that when we ground it.
Got it. Okay.
So pretty good. So
I'm just looking for big unanticipated liabilities.
yeah, if we do not continue to provide pavement preservation funds, then we will be looking at roadway reconstruction in a greater period of time. So.
I know when we're over time, but I want to say one more thing about pavement, because I really like this topic. We occasionally, every few years, do have somebody come and give us a pavement rating, scale of 1 to 100. And I haven't heard, what's the latest for?
We did one a couple of years ago and we're sitting on average 80.
Yeah, we've been in the 70 to 80 range, which is better than most cities around us. So
Which is why we can't get funding because our roads are in too good a shape. So,
it's harder to get grants that way.
Yeah.
You're staying on top of it too much.
Tell them where to take a sledgehammer.
yeah, they don't look at just the road, they look at your overall condition of your pavement and they say, well, what's your average PCI pavement condition for your city? I'm like, 84. But this road's a 69. They don't care. Yeah.
As we look forward a couple of years now, like the driving habit change, like EVs are heavier, right? So, and then looking like more buses, public transportation, does that change kind of projection cost of pavement, no, that's not really a factor.
As far as I understand, when it comes to the heavier vehicles, the pavement section that we design is sufficient to handle those loads. What you're gonna wind up seeing potentially is just more wear on the pavement over time, but you're also talking really heavy vehicles that will actually wear the asphalt away. Our bigger concern is cracks forming, water getting in there, and then that alligator you see in asphalt starting to form. We don't really see too many situations where the pavement ruts to where you have rutting. That's what heavier vehicles will wind up doing to your pavement. We don't really see that. We don't get that kind of traffic.
And we've been lowering the speed limit on them, which also reduces the wear on the pavement.
Yeah, 522 is about the only road through Kenmore that's gonna wear like that, and that's the responsibility of the state to maintain. So.
That's good news.
Yeah, based off our population, we do not maintain 522 from curb to curb, with the exception of the medians. We maintain those medians.
So I just wanted to, I know we are past time that we schedule, although it does, I think, say to me. Is everybody good? Blame Rob, but is everybody good with staying till like 9?
Yeah.
And if you need to leave, just feel free to go, you know, you guys like manage it, but. Continue. Oh, we need next slide.
I think
Sorry.
next slide. So traffic safety, this is about $206,000 a year. This, I've got 100% of that is my traffic engineer, then time for myself and one of our project managers. I have a project manager in there because we have traffic safety projects, and if they are a little more complicated, then I assign an engineer to work on those. So right now, we're allocating $50,000 per year to traffic safety projects. And these are little things, maybe putting in a speed hump or putting in a small traffic circle, just tiny little things that are low cost, but still require time and energy. Right now, the Cape is paying about $240,000 of that. And then about 23,000 of that is coming from the general fund because my project manager and myself and our admin are not funded into the Cape, so it has to come from the general fund.
Everybody knows what CAPE stands for, follow motion.
Right-of-way management, that's about 82,000 a year. That's 15% of my time, 20% of my inspector, and big chunk of that are dealing with our road standards, our code, reviews and write-ups, and code enforcement. That we got about $48,000 in general fund and about $34,000 in street fund. The $34,000 street fund, our inspector is actually, his time is actually paid through out of the street fund. So that's why we've got $34,000 there.
So you know, Joan has 8 more slides.
Let's go, Joe.
I'm talking fast. So transportation planning, we've got about $27,000 worth of expenses there, about 10% of my time and some of my admin. And it's just dealing with all the transportation related, short and long-term range planning I have to do. And that all comes out of the general fund. And then my general engineering expenses are about $418,000 a year. That's roughly a quarter of my folks' time, and that's going to meetings, trainings, it's covering all that general stuff. I also have about $75,000 per year for engineering consultants for these services that we need to get done that we don't have in-house expertise to do or resources, and so we need to do that. We don't always spend it, but it's there just in case. Sometimes I've gone over. And then I have general office expenses like computers, training, conferences, about $72,000 a year. And of that, about 378 comes from the general fund and 40,000 from the street fund. And again, that's my right-of-way inspector. That's it.
Oh, 18, because the rest of it.
Oh.
Yeah.
I was wondering, like, it seems really long.
I was gonna say 18. I don't remember having that many.
For the general section, the last slide before that,
Mhm.
so you mentioned training, is that specialized? I mean, I'm assuming it's specialized training, but are those functions time that you feel or competency that you feel could be pooled across city staff, or is that really just you have to be part of engineering to get done what needs to get done?
So yes, yes, and yes. So the training involves like a lot of our all staff training, we've got a lot of required trainings, and so that would be my staff going to that. But there's also this training that my engineering staff have to do to keep up with the latest technology and whatnot. And same with my right of inspector, he's got to be able to keep up with what's going on out there. So we offer the trainings. We go to conferences to learn what's going on out in the industry, so we can bring that knowledge back here and implement it. So,
Okay, so there's nothing pullable, it's what I'm hearing.
yeah, the most pullable thing is the all city group trainings that we do, so that we're not spending, each person spending a chunk of money, they're all get together and kind of.
Thanks.
We're ready to move to community development, Ms. Debbie Bent.
Debbie Bent, I'm the Community Development Director, and the next 4 slides will outline the department responsibilities and budget. So, next, please. So these are the main functions that we do. The comprehensive plan is a policy document that guides what Kenmore sees itself being. It's a 20-year document. And the chapters in the comprehensive plan called elements guide things for land use, housing, transportation, surface water, downtown, the natural environment, you name it. The point of this is that this is what the community wants to see. We also, how is the community going to grow in terms of population and the economy, and how we're going to accommodate that in Kenmore. And also what the comprehensive plan will tell you is what kind of public facilities and infrastructure are needed to support that growth. So there is a capital facilities element, which outlines things like future road projects, surface water projects, and parks projects. So this is truly the guiding document for what the city sees itself becoming. It sets the goals, policies, and objectives. It is state mandated. The State Growth Management Act said you shall plan and you shall have a comprehensive plan. So it's a state mandate. Also, a state mandate is a shoreline master program in critical areas. So the city is very fortunate to have a lot of shoreline along Lake Washington, the Sammamish River, Swan Creek. There's state rules and regulations around that we have to plan for, as well as associated things, critical areas, meaning things like wetlands, streams, steep slopes. Again, the state mandate around that. Downtown plan is sort of we in the downtown, and we have a lot of new activity recently. So you can see surrounding us, that's part of the downtown. Affordable housing strategy, broadly strategy and policy development. We get brought in to kind of think about new strategies or new developments and how to plan for that. We also do special projects, and there's a couple of examples up there. After we've got this guiding policy document, we're also responsible for developing a lot of the implementation regulations. So things that regulate land use, for example, the zoning code, critical area regulations, shoreline regulations, things like that. Park planning is also in my department. And so planning for how the city is going to recreate in terms of land and activities. We also then manage the park capital improvement projects. So to the 3 of the biggest ones recently were the Philocrates waterfront improvements, Lovegoon Park improvements, Rhododendron Park, Boathouse and Boardwalk, and a couple of examples of park capital improvement projects. Those projects are not funded out of the general fund; they're in the park capital fund. And then also, just for giggles, we do emergency management as well. So it's sort of a broad, it's sort of a broad range of things that we do in community development. And we also then, while responsibilities tend to overlap a lot in other departments as well. For example, economic development in the city manager's office, transportation planning with John's department, as an example. Next slide.
Well, I'm gonna say that emergency management stuff is actually required by law, that the city does a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, that's I'm new to this, so. It's a new app.
So, Debbie, on the comprehensive plan, how often are we supposed to?
So it's been changed. Right now, it's 10 years, and currently the end of 2024 is a state mandate saying you shall update all chapters of the comprehensive plan. I don't like to wait 10 years, so like, it's a huge document. So what I try and do is every chapter of the comprehensive plan is on a 5-year schedule for updates. So by the time that we get to that 10-year, we're looking pretty good. It's a lot of work to do that, I can tell you. So
And the shoreline master plan and the critical areas, they're not one and done either.
no, nothing is one and done. The comprehensive plan is a document which evolves. It evolves because the city wants to do something differently itself in terms of its own vision. We also have to be consistent with countywide planning policies. We have to be consistent with the regional plan, which is Vision 2050 through the Puget Sound Regional Council. And we have to be consistent with state law. So all those levels of planning have to talk to each other and be consistent. And you can imagine that things change. State law changes every year. New regs say you shall now do this. Okay, that's nice. So then you have to figure out how you're going to make those changes to make everything consistent. So it's ongoing.
Then like
Go ahead.
Parks Capital, Debbie's department built, the boathouse, Lagoon Park, Swahwadies. So she's been busy.
There's also the, housing, we have the housing for the strategy planning, we're supporting other departments in affordable housing. So there we go. We do a lot. And we do a lot with few staff. Here you go. There's me. And I do a lot of the oversight, a lot of the strategic policy development, a lot of the community engagement and involvement. I provide staff support to the Council and Planning Commission. I represent the city in regional partnerships, including a regional coalition for housing. And again, I'm the emergency manager, which I'm still surprised about when I see that. Paul is our principal planner, so Todd's responsibilities is he takes on a lot of the project management for update of the comprehensive plan and those implementing regulations. And he manages any grants we get to support that effort. Maureen Palisi is our park project manager, so she managed a lot of the park. You see what's happening in the parks in Kenmore. Maureen's probably been the parks project manager for that over the recent years. We also have to do park planning, so you have to figure out what you want in the parks before you can build them. So there's a park planning, and that's her job then, depending on whether we're more in a planning phase or a building phase. It depends. If we're more in a building phase, more of her salary then is supported through the park capital fund. So it depends. The Park Recreation Open Space Plan, that is the planning document that is updated every 6 years. And the reason it's every 6 years is to be eligible for state grants. If we don't update it, we're not eligible for state grants. Shannon is our admin specialist, so she keeps us in line, keeps the records straight, and she's also the clerk of the Planning Commission.
Planning Commission meets twice a month. So
The Planning Commission meets twice a month. And why do we have a Planning Commission? Again, we're required to have a Planning Commission. The Planning Commission is a voluntary board that provides recommendations anytime the comprehensive plan is amended. So that's what the function of the Planning Commission. We staff that. We staff the Planning Commission, who then provide recommendations to the council.
And can go back. So one.
We appreciate it.
So policy development, city under Debbie. So she's not just land use and comprehensive planning, but she's also kind of a catch-all for a lot of other policies. So for example, Debbie took on tenant protections that got passed a couple of years ago. She's working on a citywide art policy. So she's policy central as well.
Which makes it exciting because I never know what's going to land on my plate. Here's the expenditures, just a little over 2 million, which is 7% of the general fund, and you can see that most of that is taken up with salaries and benefits and any interns that we have. And I think earlier you explained reasons why interns are great. So that's why we try and hire them. For consulting, sometimes we need help with consulting for specialized services. So the consulting dollars are then to help support staff in their efforts for this comprehensive plan amendment or sometimes we need some help with parks, or just kind of general things that just pop up that need support. And then aside from that, when it's the general things that you need to do to support your company, you need supplies, and you need the sort of advertising and legal notices. Again, you have to do that when you're doing amendments. It's a procedural thing, so there are costs associated with that. And then professional dues, training, and travel is again a very small percentage of the budget. How do we pay for it? Well, we don't have a revenue stream. We do go after grants as much as we can. The state does give us some money for that periodic update. So at the 10-year point, every kind of jurisdiction gets allocated a certain amount of money based on population. So our allocation was $125,000 that we got to help us update the comprehensive plan. We also got 2 other grants for middle housing. And you probably heard about middle housing, maybe. So this is when now the state is starting to get way more involved in land use. Typically, it was more of a local control, and now the state is saying you shall do things. And so in the last legislative session, they passed a lot of legislation, which now means the city has to do something to comply with that state law. Unfortunately, when that legislation was passed, they assigned dollars to help implement it, which were competitive. We applied, and we were very lucky to get some grants, to get some consultant expertise, particularly around middle housing. So that is the 335,000. And on the last slide, you'll see that very nicely ties with the expenditure line item for consulting. So it's kind of, we try and do that as a match. But again, as you pointed out on other things, grants aren't, they're not a reliable string. But I think the direction it's going is if the state keeps changing laws, I think hopefully they will keep providing money to help us do the implementation. There you have it.
It sounds.
Go ahead. Support.
It sounds like that implementation, the consulting dollars were tied to those implementation and therefore also tied to those grant dollars. So like, again, when we're thinking forward to that 6-year time horizon, should we expect that you'll need to maintain that consulting expense, or will that decrease in some significant way?
We'll probably, the next time we'll be eligible to get that 10 years would be the next time in 2034. Where there will be any grant in between that, like from middle housing, for example, it's going to depend on what changes come down the pipe. So we try and do a lot of stuff in-house. So that's between the principal planner and myself. So there's only 2 of us trying to do all this work. So that's why sometimes we need help, because the workload is large and sensitive.
So to answer that question, I found that Debbie's department pretty much needs consulting dollars of some sort every year, because there's some special expertise that is needed that she doesn't have in her department. For example, every so often we have to update the critical area regulations. We need a scientist to come in. Same with the shoreline regulations, we need a scientist to come in. So to answer your question, sometimes we have, I think we always need grant dollars, consulting dollars almost every year. And sometimes they're grant funded and sometimes they're not.
Okay. Can you just go back 2 slides to that expense slide? I just want to clarify, because when I look at this, I see, staff salaries and benefits and, minor equipment and things like that. Like those are not big items. The only item I see on that page that is a candidate for cost savings is that 295. And what I'm hearing is that 295 is like, we should expect that that's going to be pretty consistent, whether it's one of these 10-year cycles or whether it's a normal year, quote unquote, that there will be some expertise that's needed, and which you'll need to have a budget, something like that to help with. Is that what I'm understanding?
It fluctuates. It's not always 295. It fluctuates. So it's a trend depending on what we're doing in terms of regulations and updating the comprehensive plan. So if it's on an element which needs more expertise, like scientists for the critical areas and things, we will need consultant help. If it's for other elements, we might not. For example, we just did the utilities element, public facilities element, and a few others internally. So it just depends. So
Mhm.
I don't know if it would help to try and go back over the years and look
Maybe a
at
longer.
maybe a longer time.
Yeah, or just
In that
look at your
like-
assumptions for those future periods and say, okay, like, are you putting lump sums amounts based on next, yeah, any kind of trend, historical trends and then assumptions on the go forward basis. To see.
Well, it sounds like, Debbie and Johnny both mentioned how the workload is going like this, and you have within staff, so you occasionally go out to the consultants or do it in-house, depending on how much you have. So is there, employees within the city that are like, I don't know, like you said earlier about an analyst or something where they can actually go between departments depending on who might need somebody?
I think that's a bigger question when you look at organization wide is, you know, is there a way to kind of look at the organization and figure out that question?
Yeah, so
Great
you-
question, yeah.
so we really don't have anybody now that kind of just.
Yeah.
moves around. Okay. But now her presentation was actually reminding me that, there was actually one other contract that the city has, so the city of Kenmore, city of Lake Forest Park, currently North Shore Utility District, but they're gonna be going away, and, North Shore Fire, is it North Shore Fire District? Which basically then becomes Shoreline Fire Department, actually contract together for emergency manager services with, NEMCO. So they hire an emergency manager and they run a pool of well, he does a lot of stuff with their policies and training, but also he runs a volunteer group of people that will help in case of an emergency.
So sometimes between, I didn't go a lot into emergency management, but the city is part of that coalition.
Mm-hmm.
And they do, Kevin Larry is their emergency manager. So that, I think the emergency management budget is currently in the Development Services Department, and I believe it's $160,000.
Some of that is funded through FEMA money, but most of it is general fund.
Most of it is general fund. There are several grants that, the emergency manager from NEMCO applies for to kind of help support emergency management.
And he uses the volunteers to try to get things done as much as possible. We recently just had somebody building training aids instead of going out and buying them.
Are you ready for a quick finance overview?
Sure.
You guys have heard a lot about the numbers, so hopefully there's not a lot of questions at this point. So what do we do in the finance department here at Kenmore? So obviously we have financial and accounting services, which includes the budget preparation and oversight of all the monies that are flowing. We do financial reporting and work with the auditors. Of course, we pay all the bills, accounts receivable, accounts payable, payroll, benefits, fixed asset management, cash receiving and internal controls. We handle all treasury, debt and investment management. We do human resources. Did you know that?
Yeah.
That's also one of my titles as HR manager. Debbie, I'm like, what?
That's not even on the org chart.
There you go. So we handle, we don't hire recruiting, that's handled in the clerk's office, but we do everything post-hire, basically. And then risk management and information technology. As we mentioned earlier, we have a contract with Lighthouse to do all of our technology, information technology, and then Brian, who's our accountant, is also the liaison with Lighthouse and is kind of our resident, guru that people go to for help when Lighthouse is not on site. So what does our budget look like? I guess I amended this one. Sorry, not consistent, but I wrote down that I amended it. So this is our newly amended expenditure budget for 23-24, staff wages, just shy of $1 million, benefits 300,000, supplies about 15,000, and our big cost outside of personnel or services We pay, over $1 million for our insurance premiums to WCIA. We have 330,000 in IT services and 100,000 in audit costs. Again, this is for 2 years. So that makes up the bulk of the services costs. We also have, King County Services. We pay them $18,000 for some other services, and then capital expenditures, are approximately 20 grand.
The King County services are, they're not election costs, are they? No, that's,
No, that's out of the,
yeah. Works.
clerk's budget. Yes, thank you.
So insurance took a big jump this last
Yeah.
year. What was like a 30% jump or something?
Yeah, maybe 25 or something, but yeah, it was a big jump.
Speaking of the insurance, and again, that seems like the big bucket of maybe. What amount, how tied are we to WCA, and what is the option of shopping around, if at all?
There's an option to shop around, yeah.
Was there a reason in the big jump?
Kind of the same with police, and their insurance costs went up, so it's just more risk management and, you know, claim payments and that kind of thing. So, and it's a shared, it's not just like Kenmore had a sudden increase in claims or anything like that, but it's a shared cost that goes across all of the numbers.
Are there, any kind of risk management programs that we could put in place that would lower that in any way? Is that an option?
Not that I'm aware of. Not sure if you're, nothing's gone across my desk so far.
And is WCIA, is that, that's a governmental agency?
Yeah,
It's a pool of cities. It's an insurance pool
Got it.
of cities in Washington state.
So the only way to, structurally, that it would seem that would be pretty low cost, because they're not profit motivated, so a private insurer. What are the other options, I guess?
Their competition is the Association of Washington Cities Insurance Pool.
Similar structure, just a different pool of cities.
Yeah, those are the two main insurers for cities in Washington state, the AWC and the WCIA.
And the level of coverage, is there choice in kind of the level of coverage, and where do we stand in that?
yeah, I'd have to look, you know, I'm still gonna hold my newbie card, so I'd have to look more deeply at what our coverage. Yeah.
Would that be something we can have as like to see the options of what the deductible, the coverage, to see the difference in the cost and premium?
See the difference between,
If there are other options,
Yeah.
it's probably something you have to request a quote for.
right, yeah, it would take a little like work to get that, but yeah, we can definitely get you what our coverage is with WCIA. But that's an easy first step, but then getting another coverage, yeah, I don't know how long it would take to get a quote from someone else, from
So I
WCIA.
think they're asking just from within WCIA. When you get different rate, different
Oh,
coverage.
is that what you were saying? You took out the
Yeah,
WCIA?
just with,
Oh,
yeah, like.
I thought you were saying comparisons, got it, yeah.
Yeah,
And I'd be curious, like, is this like pretty standard level of coverage? Are we in the middle of the pack, or do we have a premium plan? Are we the high deductible plan? You know, just kind of getting a sense of where we are relative to other cities our size, and
and also relative to like, how often are we having claims compared to some of these other cities? I mean, do we really need a high level of coverage? Because
Yeah.
we've got a lot of.
Yeah,
claims,
no,
or,
we don't
you
have a
know,
lot of claims, I don't.
In the same vein, I see that in the city council meeting agenda, there is, or there has been in recently sections closed behind closed doors, I believe, aligned to discussions around potential litigation, et cetera. Without going obviously into the specifics, is that something that might impact insurance premiums moving forward? And if so, is there an ability for us to project that?
I don't know about projecting it. I mean, I think it depends on what the claim is.
Mhm.
You know, what if it's covered by WCA or not, because there's different types of litigation.
Yeah.
We're dealing with.
The most frequent claims are around land use decisions. So like where the developer or property owner can say, you've devalued my property because of the land use decision you made. So that can be claim injuries, you know, tripping on sidewalks or something, we might run into somebody with a car or something, so injuries. And then police related lawsuits, which we don't have a problem with because Pierce County Sheriff covers us on that. Okay, so.
King
Oh,
Tide?
yeah, sorry.
Like, that's interesting.
He switches counties after 9 o'clock.
So do we generate revenue? No, we don't. So we don't have any grants or direct revenue sources, but we do manage the interest income and do the treasury management functions, as I mentioned. And here's the number I alluded to earlier. Our actual interest income was 1.1 million for 2023, and we had a budget, 2-year budget of just over 300,000. So that's a shining star in the midst of some other budget struggles. Here's how our team is set up. So the colors mean nothing. It was just the way the package chart was.
We can't see the colors on that screen, don't.
Good. Same. Good. And so of course there's me as the finance admin director, and then you can see the things to the right. Finance, accounting, budget, financial reporting, long range forecasting and financial planning, treasury, debt, investment management, HR, risk management, IT. Over to the far right, Brian Randall is the accountant who handles all things accounting, purchasing, network support, as I mentioned, fixed asset, cash management. To the left, Carla is the admin finance services manager. She handles compensation, benefits management, onboarding, leave policy administration, budget development, and fiscal analysis. And then Brenda is the payroll accounting coordinator and handles payroll and mostly accounts payable. We don't have a lot of AR, so her main functions are payroll, accounts payable. So small but mighty team.
Carla's position is a new position. It was added about a year ago as a result of adding new programs and administrative costs to go with that. So Carla's not a new employee though. So Carla, you've been here 13 years? Yeah, and so she's been with us, but when we created that new position, Carla promoted up to that new position.
So she and I are learning together.
The budget one.
Yeah.
So you do pretty much all this in-house and then you purchase like licenses for software programs to keep up with all this.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it.
Yeah.
Sorry for going over, my bad.
Yes. We need to put a little timer on him. Hey, 5 minutes on that topic. Thanks everybody, so more stand by about whether we're gonna have the meeting in 7. And then, yeah, if not, we'll probably do 2:14 at something like that with everybody. Thank you so much. Thanks all of you. Yeah.
But it's the one advantage of having the microphone, is you don't have to turn something off.